Imagine a world without salt. No preserved food. No long-distance trade. No ancient empires built on valuable resources. No great trade routes crossing deserts and oceans. For thousands of years, salt was far more than a simple seasoning. It was a necessity for survival, a symbol of wealth, a cause of wars, and one of the most important commodities in human history. Today, salt is so cheap and abundant that we rarely think about it. Yet this humble white crystal helped shape civilizations, influenced economies, and even changed the course of history. This is the story of salt, the mineral that built the world. The discovery of salt. Long before recorded history, early humans discovered that salt was essential for life. Animals often gathered around natural salt deposits and mineral-rich springs. Ancient hunters likely noticed this behavior and followed these animal trails to sources of salt. They soon learned that consuming salt improved health and helped replace minerals lost through sweat. Unlike many nutrients, the human body cannot produce salt on its own. Sodium is necessary for nerve function, muscle movement, and maintaining fluid balance. Without it, life is impossible. As human societies evolved from hunting and gathering to agriculture around 10,000 years ago, the need for salt became even more important. Plant-based diets contained less sodium than diets rich in meat, making supplemental salt increasingly necessary. What began as a biological need would eventually become one of humanity's most valuable resources. Salt in ancient civilizations. Archaeological evidence suggests that organized salt production began more than 6,000 years ago. In ancient China, people evaporated salt water from lakes and wells to collect salt crystals. Chinese records dating back to around 2700 BC describe methods of salt production and taxation. Meanwhile, in Egypt, salt played a vital role in everyday life and religion. Egyptians used salt not only to preserve food but also in the mummification process. Natron, a naturally occurring salt mixture, was used to dry and preserve bodies for the afterlife. In Mesopotamia, often called the cradle of civilization, salt became an important trade commodity. Cities near rivers and salt deposits gained economic advantages over their rivals. As civilizations expanded, control over salt supplies became increasingly valuable. Salt and the rise of trade. Salt's greatest historical importance came from its ability to preserve food. Before refrigeration, food spoiled quickly. Salt allowed meat, fish, and vegetables to be stored for months or even years. This transformed human society. Armies could travel farther because they could carry preserved food. Sailors could cross oceans with salted provisions. Cities could grow larger because food could be transported from distant regions. As a result, salt became one of the world's earliest traded commodities. Ancient trade routes emerged specifically to transport salt. Caravans crossed deserts carrying salt blocks worth their weight in precious goods. Entire economies developed around mining, transporting, and selling salt. In some regions, salt was literally used as money. The Roman Salt Empire. Few civilizations understood the value of salt better than the Romans. The Roman Empire required enormous quantities of salt to feed its armies and growing population. Salted fish, cured meats, and preserved foods became staples of Roman life. One of Rome's most famous roads, the Via Salaria, or Salt Road, was built specifically to transport salt from coastal production areas into the city. Salt was so valuable that Roman soldiers were sometimes given allowances to purchase it. This practice contributed to the origin of the word salary, derived from the Latin word salarium. Whether soldiers were directly paid in salt remains debated among historians, but the connection between salt and wages reflects its immense economic importance. The Roman Empire's ability to control salt production and distribution helped support its military and administrative power across vast territories. Salt across Africa. In medieval Africa, salt was often as valuable as gold. The Sahara Desert contained rich salt deposits, particularly in areas like Tagaza, located in present-day Mali. Massive slabs of salt were mined by hand and transported by camel caravans across thousands of miles. The famous trans-Saharan trade routes connected North Africa with powerful kingdoms such as Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. In many regions of West Africa, salt was exchanged ounce for ounce with gold. This trade helped create immense wealth and contributed to the rise of legendary rulers such as Mansa Musa, whose empire controlled major trade networks involving both salt and gold. Salt caravans became symbols of economic power, carrying one of history's most valuable resources across some of the harshest landscapes on Earth. Salt in medieval Europe. During the Middle Ages, salt remained essential to daily life. European populations relied heavily on salted fish and preserved meat, especially during winter months when fresh food was scarce. Control of salt production generated enormous wealth. Coastal towns with access to salt marshes prospered, while inland regions depended on imported supplies. Governments quickly recognized salt's economic value and began taxing it heavily. In France, one of the most hated taxes was the gabelle, a mandatory salt tax imposed by the monarchy. Citizens were required to purchase fixed amounts of salt at government-controlled prices. The tax became deeply unpopular and contributed to widespread resentment against the French monarchy. Centuries later, anger over burdensome taxes, including those on salt, would help fuel the conditions that led to the French Revolution. Salt and exploration. The age of exploration would have been impossible without salt. European sailors embarking on voyages lasting months or years relied on salted meat and fish for survival. Ships carried barrels of salted provisions to feed crews crossing oceans. Explorers such as Christopher Columbus and Ferdinand Magellan depended on preserved food supplies during their historic journeys. Salt enabled maritime empires to project power across the globe. Without effective food preservation, long-distance sea travel would have remained extremely limited. Salt was the hidden technology that made global exploration possible. The salt tax and Gandhi's protest. One of the most famous political struggles involving salt occurred in India during the 20th century. Under British colonial rule, Indians faced strict government control over salt production and sales. The British imposed taxes on salt, making an essential commodity more expensive for millions of people. In 1930, Mahatma Gandhi launched a non-violent protest known as the Salt March. Gandhi and his followers walked approximately 240 miles to the Arabian Sea. Upon reaching the coast, Gandhi symbolically collected salt from the shore in defiance of British law. The event attracted worldwide attention and became a powerful symbol of resistance against colonial rule. A simple handful of salt helped energize India's independence movement and demonstrated how a basic necessity could become a tool of political change. Salt in religion and culture. Throughout history, salt has carried deep symbolic meaning. Many ancient cultures viewed salt as a sacred substance associated with purity, preservation, and loyalty. In Christianity, salt appears numerous times in the Bible and symbolizes faithfulness and wisdom. In Judaism, salt is used in traditional rituals and religious practices. Across many cultures, sharing salt with another person represented friendship, trust, and hospitality. Even language reflects salt's historical significance. Expressions such as, worth one's salt, and, salt of the earth, remain common today, reminding us of the mineral's former value. The Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution transformed salt production. New mining techniques allowed companies to extract salt on an unprecedented scale. Steam-powered pumps drained mines, while railroads transported salt quickly across vast distances. Large underground deposits were discovered in Europe and North America. Entire industries emerged around salt extraction and processing. Salt also became important for manufacturing chemicals, glass, soap, and other industrial products. For the first time in history, salt shifted from being a scarce luxury to a widely available commodity. Prices fell dramatically, making salt accessible to nearly everyone. Modern salt production. Today, the world produces hundreds of millions of tons of salt every year. Most salt comes from three primary sources: Underground salt mines. Evaporation of seawater. Evaporation of natural brines. Modern technology allows enormous quantities of salt to be harvested efficiently. Countries such as China, India, and the United States are among the world's largest producers. Interestingly, only a small portion of modern salt production is used for food. Much of today's salt supports industrial processes, water treatment, road de-icing, and chemical manufacturing. Salt remains essential to modern civilization, even if its role is less visible than it once was. Conclusion. For thousands of years, salt was one of humanity's most valuable resources. It preserved food before refrigeration. It fueled trade networks across continents. It enriched empires, inspired exploration, triggered revolutions, and supported the rise of civilizations. Roads were built for it. Wars were fought over it. Governments taxed it. Kings controlled it. Yet today, it sits quietly on dining tables around the world, so common and inexpensive that its extraordinary history is often forgotten. The next time you sprinkle salt on a meal, remember that you are holding a substance that once shaped the destiny of nations. Because long before oil, before gold, and before modern industry, there was salt, the mineral that helped build the world.